Welcome back to the Racing Riders Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Kelly Crandall, because who else would it be? You all are stuck with me. It's been a couple weeks, but we are back. My guest today is the great Sam Bass, NASCAR's officially licensed artist. Sam is, I'm proud to say, a good friend of mine, and I've been wanting to see him for quite a while to just catch up with him and have lunch with him, and I said, hey, let's chat about racing, and I'll have you on the podcast. So that's what we did. And man, I got more than I bargained for, to be honest with you. Sam and I talked for the podcast, we talked well over an hour, but I spent more time than that with him again, just catching up and seeing how he was and all of his latest adventures and an update on his health, which is where the podcast will start. So that's what you're going to hear today. You're going to hear Sam give an emotional update on his health battles. He is in need of a kidney and pancreas transplant, so if anybody is listening, you'll hear Sam talk about how he is in desperate need of both of those things. And then we're going to talk racing. I know everybody knows Sam for his wonderful artwork and paint schemes that he's designed over the years for, let's see, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jeff Gordon, even Ryan Reed, now Alex Bowman and William Byron, Tony Stewart, Jimmy Johnson. But Sam is a race fan. He loves to talk racing, and that's what we do on this episode. So I pick Sam's brain about some, rivalries. We talk about what we saw last weekend in Fontana, the greatness that is Martinsville Speedway, which of course we are going to this weekend. Sam, of course, is going to offer some great memories and great stories about guys like, Dale Earnhardt and Bobby Allison and Alan Kulwicki. We really touched so much ground in this episode. We talk about the upcoming Hall of Fame nominations, and I got Sam I put him on the spot to give me his 5 nominees of who he would put on his ballot, and of course that leads to great stories about all of those guys, and I won't spoil who he picked for his ballot. And then there's, we talk about Alan Kulwicki, we talk about Richard Childress seeing the number 3 back in victory lane in the Daytona 500, and then we get into a conversation about how Sam would retire numbers in NASCAR, and I gotta tell you, I loved his suggestion, and I think once you guys all hear it, I think we should start a campaign and kind of send this up the flagpole to NASCAR. I thought it was a great idea, so I'm not gonna spoil that either. You guys are gonna have to listen to that, and Sam's gonna give you an update on what's coming down the road for him and his artwork. For anybody who ever comes to the Charlotte area and wants to see him, wants to see his work, he's got some news coming for what is gonna happen in May with a grand opening. And yeah, just a lot of really good stuff on this episode, including, I even wrote a note here for myself to remember. Sam is going to tell you about an idea that he had, because I took some fan questions to him, and of course one of them was about paint schemes, and Sam's going to tell you an idea that he had to make a race car look invisible. You heard me correct. It's the coolest thing. So you're going to have to listen all the way through to the episode to hear that as well. I'm so excited. I hope you can hear it in my voice. Sam, again, is a wonderful friend. He has been so kind to me. Sam was actually one of the first in-person interviews that I did at the racetrack when I first started covering races live at the racetrack. It was way back in Atlanta. I don't even remember what year it was, and he was just so kind to me, gave me all the time that I needed, and followed up with me afterwards, and just since that day he has just been a good friend, somebody great to talk to. I love going to get to see his artwork, and as you'll hear me say in the podcast, I have a lot of Sam Bass artwork that is all over my home office. He's wonderful person, a wonderful friend, a wonderful artist. So I'm very glad that Sam is the guest on this week's podcast. Before we get to the show, again, continued thank you to everybody who's been rating and reviewing. As I said a couple weeks ago, I would send out kind of some knickknacks and little things that I've been gathering from the racetrack and different stuff that teams and sponsors give away. So there was already 2 people who were lucky enough to get some stuff. I hope they're enjoying it. And if you want some stuff that I've got laying around, believe it or not, I just again created a whole nother pile. Actually, I stuffed it in a cooler. Yes, a cooler. I got a cooler at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I'm now filling that cooler with stuff to just have in one place so I can give out. So if you want some swag, I can't guarantee it's the greatest stuff, but hey, it's free, and it's from the racetrack. You may get a kick out of it. I don't need it, so I'd rather give it to you guys. So if you want anything, what you have to do is leave a rating and review, and then send me a screenshot so I know that you did it, and you're not just lying to me to get some free stuff. So send me a screenshot, show me what you said. It could be, look, I would love for it to be good. If you want to tell me I suck, that's fine too. Hopefully not. So just send me a screenshot of that, and I will be glad to send you some of the assorted goodies that I've got here. So, all right, let's get to the show because it's a good one. Like I said, over an hour with the great Sam Bass. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please tell me what you think, because I'm telling you, Sam is just not only a great artist, but he really loves the sport, and I think you're gonna find all of his memories, his recollections, his ideas, kind of how he views the sport. I think you're going to find it really fascinating. So I hope to get some good feedback on this episode. So again, thanks for the ratings and reviews. We're going to keep going. We are back. It's been a couple weeks, but we are back. So let's get to the show with Mr. Sam Bass. All right, Sam, let's get rolling. So we've been talking off air, but let's keep with the conversation that we were just having off air. So let's start with let's let everybody know, how are you doing? You look great.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
But just how are you doing physically, mentally? How's it been going?
Well, I'm going to be brutally honest with you.
That's all right. I love it.
It has been the hardest thing I have ever had to go through in my life. I started dialysis almost a year ago, June of last year, and I do dialysis 3 times a week, and the sessions are 4 to 5 hours long each time. Well, so trying just on that level, just trying to find those 15 hours that I'm spending in a dialysis chair, make up for that time, has been crazy. I mean, because I've continued to work really, really hard and try to keep up with the normal day-to-day NASCAR stuff that I've done, for 36 years now. And it's just been a challenge. But thankfully, I'm still here. I'm still, going on with life every day and trying to make the most of it. And I'm very hopeful. I need to find a kidney donor. Mm-hmm. That's our pressing need right now, because my kidneys are shot, and I need somebody to donate one to me. And so we're actively looking for a B+ kidney donor. And so if there's anybody out there listening that wants to help me out, I sure would appreciate it. But I'm doing the best I can. I don't feel 100% as far as, it really is draining on your energy level when your kidneys aren't functioning properly. And I've noticed that, and I've fought tooth and nail against that. But I have to take it and treat it realistically, because it is happening. But hopefully it won't be too much longer. I can get my transplant, and then after I get my kidney transplant, I'm going to have to get a pancreas transplant. And so, I've got a busy year ahead of me for sure. But, for everybody out there that's wondering, I'm doing well and working hard and trying to keep at it.
How do you stay so positive, Sam? I feel like friends is a good word. We've been friends now for a couple years.
Yes, ma'am.
I love getting to see you. You're always so happy and you enjoy your work. But I have to admit, since we've talked the last year or whatever it's been since everything's been going on, I have been blown away. Just not only that you're still working and you're still carrying on, but it is draining, of course. But where do you get your positive energy and your hope from? I mean, obviously there's a lot of, we're all rooting for you, but
I certainly appreciate that. I'm hard-headed. I really am. My doctors remind me of what a different and unique patient I am every time I go in there, in that I want to keep working. I want to keep moving forward despite all this stuff that's been going on. And so the only way to do that is to keep positive about it and to try to keep upbeat and just keep moving ahead no matter what's happening. And I'll be honest with you, last year that I had, with all the different things that went on with me, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It was not the best of years for Sam Bass last year, but for sure. But that was last year, and this year I'm determined to turn things around and get what I need to get physically, and I'm going to do it. And the thing that really keeps me motivated, though, is I have learned so much through this whole process that I know I'm going to be able to be a great advocate and help other people moving forward. And that's really, I really believe with all my heart, it's great to be an artist. It's great to be, to have had the success that I've had in this sport. But I really hope that I can continue to be a great artist in this sport. But I want to help people with this diabetes thing that I've gone through, because I've learned a lot of lessons, and I think I can share a lot of the knowledge that I've gained with other people that are maybe in the same situation that I'm at, and that'll all make it all worth it.
We were talking off air, and you said that it's been very humbling going through this, just the people who are interested in helping you. Have you seen a little bit of that too on social media? Because, for instance, today, when I said that I was really excited to come speak to you, there were so many people already in my timeline of, oh, we love Sam, he's such a great artist, or they had questions, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But you're quite the popular guy. So that has to help a little bit too, bring a smile to your face when you're able to go on social media and see the positives.
Kelly, I'll tell you, there's one word that I use constantly, and that's how blessed I am. Ever since I was a 7-year-old kid, all I've ever dreamed of doing was being a NASCAR artist. God has allowed me to be that, and this is the only career I've ever dreamed of, and I've been able to enjoy it, and I've been able to meet so many nice people as a result of my career. I've gotten to meet so many great and legendary drivers and musicians, and just people that I've always looked up to. And I realize every day how lucky I am to enjoy this career and to work at this profession. And I never take it for granted, and I really have always tried to treat anybody that is nice enough to reach out to me and want an autograph or attend one of my, autograph sessions or something that I do. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me that they even come out to see me, or that they even care about what I'm doing, and it's just kind of overwhelming. So I want them to always feel like, hey, I met him and he was a really nice guy, and I always try to keep that in mind, because I would never want to upset or hurt anybody's feelings that took the time to come see me.
So I don't know if you remember. So I think it was 2 years ago, or maybe it was last year. I don't remember. But I don't know if you remember. So when you had your shop over by the Speedway, we're here sitting in Smith Tower at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but your shop that used to sit off a turn two, I brought my dad in one day, and you just talked about how it's so great when people are like, I met Sam and what a great guy. Do you know my dad still asks all the time, how's Sam doing? It's great. It was great to see him. I still have I think he got a picture that day or whatever it was. So just to bring another smile to your face, I wanted to make sure you did that.
I appreciate that, because that type of stuff is what keeps me going. This dialysis and everything that I'm going through, and the kidney failure and everything that I'm experiencing, it's been hard. I mean, it's really been hard. And there are days that I really don't feel good. But the fans always pick me up. And, you know, and the one thing that I always try to remember is no matter how bad a day I'm having, there's somebody, unfortunately, that's having an even worse day. And you know, I always try to be conscientious about the fact that when people meet me, that I really need to try to always be very positive towards them, because you never know. Words are so powerful. And somebody might be having the worst day of their life, and if you say something that's encouraging or meaningful to them, you might turn their whole life around.
It goes a long way.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, one of the things that's blown my mind over the years that I've been doing this, and this is my 37th year working at this.
I was going to ask what year this was.
Yeah, but I get cards and letters from people, and they'll tell me about meeting me when they were 14 years old, and they might be 35 now.
So besides making you feel old.
yeah, and they'll talk about, and you know, you encourage me to, you know, continue my go-karting, or you encourage me to continue my artwork, or you encourage me to, you know, to watch my diet and to lose weight or whatever, and because I told you that I was really struggling or whatever. It could be anything, and they'll say, and you were so motivating and so encouraging to me, and it really changed my life. And that, you talk about something that just makes you stop in your tracks. But, you know, you're just having a conversation with people, but at the same time, you're trying to be something very positive to them, because, you know, you're engaged with them, you care about them, and you want them to know that you care. And whenever you find out months or years later that what you said or did had that positive an effect on them, that's very meaningful, and it helped them, and it helps you too, you know.
So if all goes according to plan, you had said earlier, again off air, that you hope to be in Martinsville this weekend. So you'll get a little bit of racetrack therapy, get to interact with the fans, and that'll be your first race of the year. And,
yes, ma'am.
I mean, Martinsville. I love Martinsville.
Yes.
How do you? I know you do too.
Well, Martinsville is very special to me from the standpoint of my aunt and uncle took me to races as a young kid, and we went to Martinsville about 4 times a year. And we would camp out for several days on the weekends, and I would eat more hamburgers and hot dogs than I probably want to admit. But
that's what camping's all about.
We would go. I remember me and my cousins would go just outside the walls at Martinsville and play King of the Hill on those walls. And Martinsville is so beautiful. If you've never been to Martinsville, it is a must-see. I mean, you've got to experience it, because it is some of the most beautiful country. You know, all the surrounding area around that racetrack. And then the way, you know, it takes you back 70,
it hasn't changed. Yeah, it hasn't
70
changed.
years. Yeah, but
So
yet it's still
that,
beautiful.
Yeah, you get that. Like you said, the 70s or whatever it is, you get that the good old days, as people like to say. You get that feeling.
Yeah.
And Martinsville is just...
It's amazing.
It's a classic racetrack. Yeah. I remember, funny story, I remember the first year that I got to go to Martinsville and cover a race. I think it was the fall of 2013. There's the playoff race. And people were laughing because you would have thought I was at the Daytona 500, but I was so excited that I was like, I'm going to Martinsville, just because the history of Martinsville, and like I said, it hasn't changed. Beautiful scenery with the rolling hills and just great racing. It's just
that fall race at Martinsville has been. Some of the best races of the year.
It's hard to top the last couple of years.
Yeah, you had Jeff Gordon win one year, and you had Dale Jr. win one year, and both those years, I thought they were going to tear the track down. The fans were so crazy, and the electricity in the air was just
were you there?
Unimaginable. Yes.
So I wasn't there. I'm curious. So I wasn't there the year Junior won. Yeah. That was 2014. I was watching at home. I think I was undergoing a medical procedure at that time. Right. But I was there the next year with Jeff Gordon, and you are absolutely right. I thought that place was going to burn to the ground. Yeah. I have never. I remember. I think I tried to write it that week. And just try and capture that scene. It was electric.
Yes.
I can't even describe it right now. You had Jeff out there jumping around on the front stretch before they even brought the stage out for the official victory lane. He's jumping up and down. The sun had gone down. We didn't have lights at that time, but you just see all these flash bulbs from cameras and phones and the noise. It was incredible.
That race was amazing because 10 miles away from that racetrack, it was pouring the rain all day long.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, and it was just kind of crazy. But I will tell you this: I've been going to races since I was a 7-year-old kid. Okay, so that's almost 50 years I've been going to races. Other than those two events. Dale Jr.'s win at Martinsville, Jeff Gordon's win at Martinsville. I think the electricity was going on those races. Only Dale Sr.'s win at Daytona was that feeling for me. It was absolutely unbelievable.
It was crazy. And last year with everything that happened at the end of the race between Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin, that was another electric scene just because it was charged up for the controversy reasons.
Right.
But if you're talking about feel good stories or just whatever it may be when it comes to wins, that day with Jeff Gordon in 2015 was nothing I've never felt before.
It was so the thing about it was that anticipation of wanting to see him win again.
And let's be honest, we were all still fired up from what happened between Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano.
Yeah, for sure. The whole day was just a classic racing event. But that build-up of watching Jeff he was being competitive and coming up through the field and everything.
He had a top 5 car.
But you never really thought, I don't know if today's his day or not. And then it started getting more and more likely. And then
as soon as that crash happened, it opened the window
that just caused the anticipation to be so great that when it actually came to fruition, everybody was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I was here to see this.
There was, after everything that had just happened, what was it, 50 or 20 laps, whatever it was beforehand, for it to end that way was amazing.
Races like that, though, those are the things that fans live for. Anybody that enjoys this sport, those type moments are what keeps you coming back, and just makes you so glad that you're a NASCAR fan because they're so special, and that you have truly witnessed racing history, and that's there's no better feeling than that.
So let's talk some more racing. You said this year is your 37th year. Is there any of your paint scheme designs out on the racetrack? I think I know of maybe 2, but I don't want to sound like an idiot, so I'm going to let you tell me.
No. Exalta had me do their cars again this year. And
so that would be both the 24 and the 88?
Yes, yeah. And, they've been such a special partner of mine since when I designed the original Rainbow Warrior car in late 1992. So it's a long ride, and so I was so honored and blessed whenever they said, "Hey, we'd like for you to put a spin on their paint schemes this year," and everything. And I'm partial, but they're my two favorite paint schemes out there this year. Yeah, so I'm very excited about that. I hate that Dale Jr. is not out there. I had such a great time last year working with him whenever he campaigned my Flashpoint paint scheme last year, and that was very special because not many people really realize this, but whenever he came into Cup, I designed his Budweiser car.
Yep.
So when he left Cup, I designed a special paint scheme for Exalta with the Budweiser throwback. So
you did that.
I was able to bookend his career.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
And that was so special, because it was really. The more I thought about it, I was like, gosh, how great is this?
That car brought back so many memories.
Yeah, it was really a great time, and the whole sport's missing him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I miss seeing him there and everything, but his broadcasting career is going to be phenomenal.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
He's going to offer so much. So besides the two Exalta cars, are there any other
this
ones?
year, because of everything that went on last year, I really didn't have a chance to design a bunch of things like normal, but I'm determined to come back bigger and better next year.
So when I came in today and you asked, well, what are we going to talk about? And I said, well, to be honest with you, I really don't have a direction. I just want to kind of shoot the breeze in a way and catch up. But let's talk racing because, of course, everybody asks you about your paint schemes and your artwork. You and I have had many wonderful conversations about that. But I remember you told me once that you love when people just ask you about the sport.
Yeah.
Because you're a fan of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's very special to me. I mean, of course I love working in it. I love painting it and drawing it and designing for it. But, at the end of the day, I'm a fan. I mean, I've been, following the sport since I was 7 years old, and so that's about 49 years of being there. And
what was your first race?
Gosh, I love it. I went. My first race was a little track called Southside Speedway, which is across the way from the Richmond Fairgrounds Raceway. And so I went there, and Bobby Allison was visiting that night, and I got a chance to meet him, get his autograph and everything, and I was hooked. So I've been a Bobby Allison fan since that night, and to have the opportunity over the years to work with him and to design his cars and do different things. I mean, that's been literally a dream come true. But later that year, I went to my first race over at the Richmond Fairgrounds Raceway, and
what a place to see your first race, right?
Well, this was 1972, right? And so I was able to see the Petty Allison feud, as it was, and that was quite a monumental day over there for that feud and everything. And and it's really amazing to think that there really hasn't been a bigger rivalry in this sport in all that time than the Petty Allison feud. Do
you think we're close with anybody today? I mean, we the media tried to really kind of goad Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski into something last year before the championship race. Do you think we will ever have another natural rivalry? I mean, I think Brad, and at least from Kyle's standpoint, he admits sometimes you just don't like a guy. Yeah. Do you think we'll ever get back to that, where there's just a rivalry where two guys just?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but it just is amazing. It really is amazing to me that the Allison Petty thing is just been as big as it has been, and as storied as that rivalry has been. But Brad and Kyle, there's a lot of drivers in Kyle.
There's a lot of drivers in Brad too.
Yeah, for sure. But I definitely think there's potential. You might have Larson and Harvick after this past weekend.
That was quite a little situation there.
Yeah,
I think again, you talk about how. I admit we media sometimes are guilty of asking leading questions, and I think maybe after Sunday's race at Fontana, we were kind of heading down that same direction of, well, Kevin, did your frustration just get the best of you, and not even knowing if that was a factor, but it was kind of throwing out that leading question of did you just try and take him out?
It was kind of one of those things that you just couldn't believe you saw happen. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
On a straightaway.
Exactly. I mean, it just was so unusual. But, the one thing as a fan, I am so excited about this year because it just seems like a brand new beginning. There's nothing as an artist that's more exciting than a brand new fresh sheet of paper.
Right.
Because there's so much potential there, and you've got to make it happen. And this year, it just seems like with Dale Jr.'s retirement and almost the end of an era, so to speak, that there's a fresh, clean slate, this year. And you look at the drivers that we have out there this year. You got Alex Bowman, and you've got William Byron, and you've got Chase Elliott, and you've got all this new influx.
Bubba Wallace.
Bubba Wallace and the opportunities that are presented there. It just seems like NASCAR is ready to start a whole new era, and there's so much potential there for these drivers, as well as you've got Harvick and Johnson. Yeah. All this older guard.
It's a nice mix.
It is. And you don't know really what's going to happen week to week, and it just seems like there's a bunch of great new opportunities for people really to shine.
And new stories.
Exactly.
I think that's an interesting way of putting it. You don't know what's going to happen each week. And I feel like maybe for the first time in a long time, we haven't had that in a while. Right. It was, you knew such and such was going to dominate. You knew such and such teams were going to win races.
Right.
But it's an interesting analogy to say that it's kind of like a blank slate, because I think you're right. I think with such a nice mix between the young guys and the veterans, and all of these guys are competitive and capable of running up front and winning races, that we really are going to these racetracks and you can kind of assume, okay, these guys are going to run up front.
Right.
But you don't really know who's going to win.
Well, I don't think there's going to be any question this year that Kevin Harvick's going to have a good year, and he
going out on a limb there, Sam.
He may be, the person that everybody else has got to take off that championship run, But I mean, Sunday was a great example of what can happen that is totally unexpected. And I just think there's so much young, emerging talent that's come along that is out there right now, and people are improving and getting better and better. I just think this could be a really interesting year for the entire sport.
Who do you think will be that next big star? I mean, a lot of us talk a lot about Chase Elliott, but I feel like there's more. I feel like, again, we have such a stacked series. And normally I feel like you see that a lot in maybe the trucks or Xfinity series, where there's so much talent in those lower series that you're just waiting to get to Cup. But I feel like it's kind of evened out now across all three series. Is there any other people that stand out that you're like, that guy could be a star?
I really have been impressed with William Byron. I really have.
How can you not be?
Because look at what he has done. Everything he has raced, he has won in, you know, and not only won in, but been champion of, okay? And you know, that's impressive. I mean, the guy is still in college, you
20
know.
years old.
Yeah, and you just kind of shake your head like, look, this really isn't that easy, and yet he's making it look easy. And just this year, if you look at his improvement, you know, it's just phenomenal. It seems like every week you can see him developing and getting better, and I think that's going to be your next big star.
I feel like Daniel Suarez is kind of on that same path here.
I think he has been so impressive. I mean, I'm still at 56 years old trying to master the English language, right? And to think that he came over here and didn't know really how to speak English, and what he has learned. Not only has he had to learn the language, but he's had to learn the communication about
the racing lingo.
Exactly, which is a totally, as you know, a totally different lingo. And then so many of the guys in the garage, they've got their own way of speaking and everything as well. But he has been so incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
Just the whole deal. I judge a lot by drivers at autograph sessions. You know, as crazy as that might sound, I mean, I admire their talent on the racetrack, but I pick up a lot about them as individuals at autograph sessions, because I'm very fortunate in that I get to do a lot of autograph sessions with these drivers.
Yeah.
They'll throw me in there, and I'll be sitting beside these guys, and I'll hear how they talk to the fans, and I really learn a lot about them, about how they carry themselves, what type of person they are, and everything else. And I can tell you that I've been so impressed with Daniel Suarez since I met him, in every facet of the way he conducts himself.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of his.
It seems like fans, you mentioned autograph sessions, it seems like fans are really kind of flocking to him. Like, they're seeing that not only is he talented, he won an Xfinity championship, but he's relatable in a sense. Like, he doesn't mind interacting with fans,
right,
and getting to know the fans. And what's funny is you talk about him learning the language. Did you ever hear how he taught himself the English language?
I've heard various stories, but what are you...
So, I think it was Daniel's rookie year in Xfinity.
Right.
And back when they used to have the banquet the Monday after Homestead down in Miami.
Right.
So I sat with Daniel the night of the banquet, and I wanted to do just an overall feature on, his rise and getting to Joe Gibbs Racing,
right,
which is an elite ride.
Right.
And I said, Daniel, explain to me, the learning process of just not only coming to America, which he did on his own. He left his family in Mexico. But I said, how did you learn, or how are you learning the English language? And he said cartoons.
Cartoons.
He watched cartoons. I mean,
that's what I'd heard.
Yeah, you and I joke about being able to just speak properly in English. I can't imagine trying to teach myself another language by cartoons.
Yeah.
So he's an impressive young guy. I think the biggest thing with Daniel is what you've noticed with his progression is that his second year always seems to be better.
Yeah.
So having gotten his rookie Cup season out of the way, which was completely thrown at him at the last minute, and he handled very well, but they had so much learning. His crew chief changed. Now that he goes into his second year and his third year and his fourth year, I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, it's really incredible when you can't mention Daniel Suarez without thinking about Carl Edwards. And everything that we're talking about right now about the clean slate, if you look at NASCAR over the past three years, and you look at the fact that they've lost Jeff Gordon, Dale Jr., Tony Stewart, and Carl Edwards.
You can throw in Matt Kenseth and Greg Biffle.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yet, you look at the wealth of talent that's in that garage area right now and the potential fan bases for everybody. I think the sport is in a really good place.
Yeah.
And as hard as that may be to really acknowledge, given who we've lost from being competitors, I really feel a real big sense of excitement about this year, and I think that's very promising for the sport.
So you bring up Carl Edwards, and that, honestly, that's the first time I thought about Carl in quite a while. And last year when he stepped away, he didn't retire. I guess he didn't retire. Nobody likes to use the word retire.
Right.
But when he stepped away, somebody asked me very early in the season, I think we were only week 2.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think we were at Atlanta. And somebody asked me, well, why is nobody writing about, or why is nobody talking about where what the sport's going to lose not having Carl Edwards? And I said, well, it's really too early to. Again, we're maybe week 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season. It's really too early to tell that.
Right.
Now that we're going into another year, do you feel like because we have so much talent, and again, talent that's competitive, I don't know if we've really kind of lost out too much without Carl. I mean, granted, not having a star is not having a star.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's been as debilitating as maybe people thought, because it was like, oh my gosh, we're losing another big name.
Well, I will say this. That has been the strangest, most shocking thing I have ever witnessed in this sport.
I agree.
Because whenever he left initially, I thought for sure he would come back. I thought for sure we'd at least hear from him. There has been nothing at all, and I miss him. I really do miss him. I miss him being in the garage area. He was a friend of mine, and the biggest thing that I think the sport misses is Carl was every man. Carl had such a all shucks type of a demeanor that everybody could identify with it,
That's true.
and I think everybody could go, I could be that Carl Edwards type guy, you know what I mean? And I think that is a void for sure, but I hope he's doing well, and I hope he's happy.
I think what took everybody by surprise, or maybe what made people skeptical of him staying away, like you just said, we haven't heard from him. He hasn't come back. Now, we don't know if he ever will, but I guess what maybe led to the skepticism, and you talk about, it's one of the most shocking things you've ever seen. For me, it was like, I've never heard of anybody, whether it's in racing or any professional athlete, be brave enough to one day wake up and admit, I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's where some people were skeptical and didn't really believe his reasoning behind why he was stepping away.
Right.
Now here we are, going into year 2 post Carl, and good for him for not only admitting that, but like you said, we haven't heard from him.
Right.
But the little bit that I have heard is that he's off, he's traveling, he's spending time with the family, he's got his his home and his land, and that's awesome.
And he's happy.
And that's the biggest thing, he's happy.
Yeah, and that's all you could ever want for anybody, and everybody has their own things that make them happy. So, who are we to judge or criticize or anything? I mean, because if somebody has something in mind that's going to make them happy, hey, let them go off and do it, and everything else. But one of the things that happened over the weekend, I enjoyed seeing Tiger Woods do well again.
Yeah, somebody who came back.
And so I would hope that if Carl ever does decide to come back, what a story that would be.
I think if Carl came back, he would be just as competitive as when he left.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And so I kind of, in the back of my mind, am hoping that we get to see that, Him
and Matt Kenseth.
Yeah.
Just because I don't think, and I've said this a few times in many different areas, business is business.
Yeah.
Joe Gibbs Racing has to do what Joe Gibbs Racing has to do. But it stunk for Matt.
Yeah.
And it would be really nice if he was able to, if he wants to, which from everything that we understand, he still wants to race.
Well, let me tell you, he won the championship in 2003. Last year, 2017, he had not lost a thing.
No, not at all.
In 14 years, right? And whenever somebody to have been as competitive and dependable as he was throughout his entire career, you just don't want to see anything bring it to an end that was out of his control. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that really was not good about it. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to see things end under those terms. You want it to be the terms of that guy.
Right.
So I mean that's somebody that I miss week in and week out too, because he was such a competitor and such a good, decent person.
Yeah, and not just that, but his sense of humor.
Oh my God. He could say more with fewer words than just about anybody I've ever met.
Yeah.
I really have a lot of respect for him, and I want him to be happy, but I want it to be under his own terms.
So I can't believe I didn't think of this before we started talking. So I'm going to bring it up now that it has hit me. You were very close with Dale Earnhardt Sr. Friend, not only as friends, but professionally, whether it was artwork or paint schemes, whatever it may have been. What did you think of seeing the three back in victory lane in the Daytona 500? It was really amazing. It really was. I mean, I was incredibly happy for Richard Childress. And Austin for sure. Yeah, right. Austin, it was a great story, but I think many people who have been around the sport for quite a while and know Richard, that night was just so special for Richard.
Well, it was. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Austin.
No.
But it was almost like Richard Childress had won the Daytona 500. It was such, and for it to be the 20th anniversary, and everything, and as crazy as the finish of that race was, it was like, you know what, this is the way it should have happened.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very special. It was a much needed shot in the arm for not only RCR, but
NASCAR as well.
Yeah, NASCAR.
It was a great way to start the season
in a big way. And I just think you have to feel good about a situation like that. Richard Childress has, I used to go to Martinsville, and they would open up the gates of the speedway after the race was over, and the fans could come out of the grandstands and go into the infield and get autographs. Okay. And it was about 1976, I believe it was. I went down there and actually helped a driver load his car up onto his flatbed and put his tires away. And that driver was Richard Childress. And Richard Childress treated me as nice and kind that day as a, 14-year-old kid as he does today. And with all of his success and all the changes that have went on in his life and the accomplishments, he is still the same person that I met on that flatbed truck in 1976. And that's the biggest compliment I can give that guy. I mean, because he is a true, sincere person that you love to see be successful, because you know he's worked for it and paid for it and deserves it. And I think that's awesome.
I'm assuming you enjoy the fact that the 3 is back, and do you like seeing it out there? I mean, obviously there's some people like, well, that was Dale's number, it should have stayed away, but
well, something I've never, I have the utmost respect for that number being a Dale Earnhardt number. But Dale Earnhardt was number 2. Dale Earnhardt was number 15.
Exactly.
And he went through a succession of different numbers, but really the reason that number became a 3 for Dale was because it was 3 first for Richard Childress. So if Richard Childress wants to give that number to his grandson, who are we to say you can't do that?
And the best thing is that Austin really seems to be turning a corner, and in the sense of performance. And if that number starts running well, everybody's gonna love it.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I have my own theory about the numbers. I think they ought to be able to retire numbers. I really do, but I don't think they should necessarily retire the number. I think they should retire the number style, the font of the number. So in other words,
that way we don't run out of numbers.
Exactly. So in other words, if they had wanted to retire Richard Petty's 43, just make the treatment of the number be different, but make it so that you can never run that particular number. That's
a great
style font.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, so I would love to see that happen.
That is awesome, because it's one way to honor someone who made that stylized number iconic, but at the same time, in NASCAR, there's only so many car numbers that we can have. Correct. Of course, we don't go into triple digits, so you can't lose your car number. Right. So it's the best of both worlds.
I think that would solve a lot of problems, because that way, if you wanted to bring that number font back for, say, a Darlington throwback race, you could do that.
It adds to that paint scheme. That's awesome.
But otherwise, you got to stay away from that.
Have you ever pitched
when
that
they retire
to anybody? Should we start that campaign?
We can start that campaign.
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way.
I think it would make a lot of sense, though, and it would solve a lot of problems, I think.
All right, so a few more things for you. I've got a few fan questions I want to get to, but before we do, somebody else that you've worked closely with over the years, you mentioned the Axalta paint scheme, the DuPont paint scheme for Jeff Gordon, and Jeff kind of leads the way for this year's Hall of Fame nominees. I have my little cheat sheet here if you want to look at them. So I'm curious. I think Jeff Gordon, first off, is going to be the first unanimous pick for the Hall of Fame this coming May. What have you thought about this current crop of nominees, and have you thought about who you'd like to see? Do you need my little cheat sheet?
Yeah, I need a cheat sheet, but I will say this.
Let's start with this. How do you feel about Jeff being on the ballot so soon? I mean, granted, he's within the confines of what the requirements are. But a lot of people are saying, man, it's so soon.
Right. Well, I don't feel like it's too soon. He's going in for sure. And I agree with you. He'll be 100% locked to go in. Jeff Gordon's career is as stellar and perfect as it could ever have been. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he pretty much wrote the book on how you do it. And that, that I even had the chance to design and work for him and call him a friend for 23 years, and still to this day, for sure. But, I mean, I feel so special and so honored. and when somebody like him comes along, I mean, hey, the first opportunity they have to go into the Hall of Fame, I think they should go in. But this class of nominees is phenomenal.
It always is. So tough.
The great thing about the Hall of Fame is that all the people on this list are deserving. The bad thing about the Hall of Fame is that all of these people are deserving, but only 5 can go in. And that's a slippery slope to walk, for sure, because when I look over this list, there's a lot of these people that I would have thought would already have been in there. But you can't put everybody in at one time.
So that's what makes every May so much fun. Is because you can sit here and talk about, well, this person I would have thought was already in.
Right.
This person should go in now. It's too soon for this person.
Right.
It leads to so many conversations,
right.
and we get to do it every May.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. The Hall of Fame is so special. It's such a sacred gathering place, and you really feel a reverence when you're in there about, what it took for these people to have the careers that they did and the trials and tribulations. This year's inductees, I went to that and that ceremony and was just so impressed with all the speeches and with all the backstories.
This past January's was very good.
Yeah, it may have been the best one, I thought.
It's one of the best ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, but it was really something, and and I've been very fortunate in that so many of the people that have went into the Hall of Fame, I've known them personally, and that's a very special thing. But in looking over this list, it would be hard to not just say, okay, Jeff Gordon's a lock for sure. I would love to see Alan Kulwicki go in.
Me too.
Because Alan Kulwicki, I don't think, is given enough credit for what he did and what he brought to the sport. Not only is a tremendous race driver, but the first time I ever heard the word engineer, somebody was talking about Alan Kulwicki. And I think he changed the whole direction of the sport, because people were sitting around measuring tire stagger, and then they glance over at Alan on his laptop and go, what's he got? And then they saw how bad he was beating them with 5 guys working on his team, and it changed everybody's way of thinking.
The more that I learn about Alan, the more that I talk to people who either worked with him or were in the sport when he was in the sport, the more I am impressed that Alan Kulwicki was the epitome of somebody who did more with less.
Yes.
And the stories that you hear about how, he didn't have the money.
Yeah.
So he would reuse, and because he had to, they would reuse parts and pieces and get so much out of it. And then you talk about, again, what he did as a driver, just in terms of his talent and how smart he was. He could be behind the wheel in the middle of a race, and he's doing his own fuel mileage and figuring it out in the car. And I'm just continually impressed the more I learn. He
was a very, very special person. I had the chance the year he won the championship. I designed his uniform for Hooters. And that was such a special thing, in that, and it's very sad, but I was on the phone with the guys, 2 of the executives at Hooters that day of the plane crash, and they were going to send me one of his championship driving uniforms, because I had designed it to put on display in my gallery. And I remember that morning hanging up the phone and going, okay, well, y'all have a good weekend and we'll talk Monday. And then hearing about that crash that night. And it really, of all the things I've done in the sport, that one just hammered home how volatile this sport is, because you just can never take anything for granted, because we're all moving so fast and we're doing so much and we're going here and we're going there, and you just have to constantly be aware of how precious life is. And later on, they were going to send that uniform to me, the people at Hooters, and I told them no, I didn't want it anymore. Give it to somebody within his family, because I would feel bad taking something that precious. And the guys, whenever they sold the shop, the guys were cleaning out the attic over there, and they found a Hooters race hood from his original car, and they brought that over to me. And it was a pretty cool moment. But I have a special place in my heart for Alan. I'd have to say Waddell Wilson. I think Waddell should be somebody that should go in, given his history. Him and Robert Yates probably built the two best motors out there ever. And Waddell, and then Roger Penske. I mean, Roger Penske has been in this sport for a long, long time, and has really always done things first class, and has always had people looking at him to see how he did things. And I think people have learned a lot from him, for sure.
The Penske way is what everybody...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just cannot argue with that man's success.
No. And it's kind of shocking that he only has, one Cup championship, and then it took until 2012 with Brad Keselowski to get it. Yeah,
for sure.
But that doesn't diminish his accomplishments at all.
No,
it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, I can't believe. But whether it's race wins or just he's had so many great drivers drive for him. I mean, Rusty obviously was a staple, and
right.
Kurt Busch, who's a champion, was there for a time, and it was just the Penske way.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that when you think about Rusty Wallace, you would have thought for sure he would have won a championship for Roger Penske.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's just really hard to believe that Brad's got the only one for Roger, but
and I think that makes Brad's legacy a little bit more special. Is that not only is he a champion, but who he was able to do it for. Right,
for sure. The fifth pick, I think, is the one that I struggle with the most. But I really would probably go Harry Hyde, because he was such a character.
Or Harry, what is it, Harry Hogg, as everybody Days of Thunder now.
Yeah, he was such a character, and really, he kind of changed the dynamics of the way people saw crew chiefs. I think that you could make a good argument for his case. But every one of these people on this list, my heart really pulls for Davey Allison. And I would be thrilled to death if he was put on that ballot, or if he was elected from that ballot. And Buddy Baker, Buddy Baker, he was a great competitor and a very accomplished driver, but outside the track, in his broadcasting career,
tremendous.
He did so much for the sport and for the fans, and I think that's somebody that could be given a lot of serious consideration too. But I'm so happy for all those people that were nominated. They're very deserving, and if any of them, no matter who the 5 are, I think it's going to be an incredible class.
I relate, talking about Buddy Baker, I relate what you just said about his broadcasting career, but also what he did away from the race car or away from the booth and to the fans, and just what he did for the sport. Mm-hmm. I relate that to Benny Parsons.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed listening to Benny in the broadcast booth, because when I was growing up, that's who was in the broadcast booth. And he was just tremendous, and he was so colorful, and he could capture a moment. And I was really just so excited when he went into the Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and I thought that was such a great story. And I think for Buddy it would be the same thing, because not only a great driver who did so much behind the wheel, but in the bigger picture did so much for the sport.
Well, I mean, they are ambassadors for the sport. Mm-hmm. I was I forget where it was, somewhere a couple months ago, and Darrell Waltrip's name came up, and the person, it was at a restaurant, and they had no idea that Darrell had been a former driver.
Oh my!
They just thought that he was a commentator, and it's like, you have missed out on so much if you don't know about Darrell Waltrip's driving career, because he was about as tough as nails, and arrogant and brash as he could be. And I remember when he came
was entertainment.
I remember when he came into the sport, how upset he had everybody, like, Bobby Allison and David Pearson and Cale Yarbrough. I mean, they were just, they couldn't believe this guy, what he was saying, how he was acting, and everything else. And now, he's this beloved broadcaster, But that's one of the things that's so great about the sport is, there are so many characters, and it's really great to see, and hopefully NASCAR get back to letting those characters flourish.
Yeah, I was just about to say that same thing. We need characters. It's so funny that you said that. Mm-hmm. So I hope, and if everything goes according to my plan, I hope one of my upcoming podcast episodes that I'm going to get to sit with a few of my media colleagues and kind of have like a roundtable discussion on the Hall of Fame. So I won't go too much into it, but since you offered your 5, I'll offer mine. I agree. Again, I think Jeff Gordon is absolute lock. It's kind of hard to believe that we haven't had a unanimous pick yet, but I think Jeff Gordon is about to be the first. And I'll go with Harry Hyde as well, Alan Kulwicki as well. I just, that would be amazing. And then from a car owner perspective, you were talking about Roger Penske. I'm going to go with Joe Gibbs. Again, I don't want to go too much into it, but I think, long story short, you look at his accomplishments. Yeah. And then my 5th one, you talk about how it's always hard to do this, and I don't envy I do, but I don't. I don't envy the people who every May gather at the Hall of Fame for voting day and have to make this decision. I do hope maybe one day in my career I will get to be in that position.
I'm sure.
And this will change. My 5 will probably change so much between now and May, but I will say, for my 5th, just going with my heart, is that Davey Allison. We talked about Davey, and I would love to see that. So hopefully in a future podcast episode, I can argue with a bunch of my media colleagues about that. Yeah. But
well, the thing about Davey, I've heard point counterpoint.
Yes.
And people say, well, he didn't do enough this, or he didn't do enough that, or whatever, but he did a lot in a short period of time, and you look at the accomplishments that he did make, and in a career that was cut short, and I don't know how he couldn't go in. One
of my favorite Davey Allison stories, and I think what should be taken into account when it comes to the Hall of Fame is a lot of people talk so much about big picture in terms of what they did for the sport. One of my favorite Davey Allison stories is, I can't recall what year it was, but it might have been 92 when he was injured. I think he had broken ribs or maybe it was a collarbone, but he was hurt. He was racing hurt at North Wilkesboro, and they had somebody there on standby. Larry McReynolds was the crew chief at the time, and it got halfway through the race, and he told whoever it was, if you want to stay here and enjoy the race with us, you can, but there's no way Davey's getting out of that car. Right. Not only did he not get out of the car, he won the race. Yeah. And so my favorite part of that story is after the race is over, Larry is doing everything with inspection. They've already done all their media obligations, and he comes back out in the garage, and you would have thought for sure that Davey had left and was resting and whatnot, but he was sitting in the back of a pickup truck on pit road and was signing every last autograph before he left. Right. And he was exhausted, and he was bruised and beaten. Right. And he cared so much about the sport and the fans. Right. And I hope a lot of people maybe not take that into account, but I think that that's something that Davey should absolutely be thought about for.
Well, I'll tell you what, growing up, I was a Bobby Allison fan, and I went to Bristol one time, and it was back when they used to run the Bristol August race in the daytime, and sat in the bleachers and watched Cale Yarbrough lead every single lap of that race or whatever, and it was a long day. Again, though, they opened up the gates at the end of that race and went down into the pit area, and both Bobby Allison and Richard Petty were sitting on the hoods of their street cars in the infield, and they sat up there after running 500 laps at Bristol for like 2.5 hours and signed every autograph of every fan that was there. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes. And that's where Davey learned to do that from, because that is how he was raised. And, that type of appreciation for the fans, it's so important, and that it goes back in the racing heritage a long way, and it's got to be respected and honored and carried on. But I feel so fortunate that I've been around the sport for as long as I have and got to see things like that. Because you tell people...
It's special.
You tell people about things that you saw and you witnessed, and in this modern era, they can't believe it. But...
That's very true.
I've always been... I love to tell this story. Whenever I used to carry my prints out to Dale Earnhardt's, many times he would see me lugging these boxes up there and carry them into the conference room for him to eventually sign. And if he saw me coming out there, many times he would say, "Okay, come on, you got an hour, I'll knock those out." And I would go in there in the conference room and be moving those prints as fast as I could so he could get them signed. And at the end of him doing all the autographs, he loved to take the tape gun and help me package up the boxes. And then he would help me carry them to the car. And when I tell people that Dale Earnhardt helped me carry my prints to the car, they look at me like, "You're kidding." And I'm like, no, that's the kind of person he was. He was as sincere and down to earth as you could ever imagine. And I feel, it's hard to talk about without getting choked up. I feel so blessed that I got to see that side of that man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it was so special and will always be very special to me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why so many people miss him.
Mm-hmm.
Is because he really was. He was special in every way, and he really cared. He genuinely cared about people,
Right.
whether you were on his team or a fan, or whoever he came in contact with.
Right. Well, I used to go out there 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning to his the old Bush garage, where DEI is now. But I go out there and I'd see all the fan mail that he had in his shop.
Oh, I can't imagine.
And I mean, it would be, honestly, it'd be like 25,000 pieces of mail at any given time. And he would be sitting there licking the stamps and pressing the envelopes together with the postcards in it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just phenomenal to see that.
Yeah, he really was special.
But he cared about his fans, and he did that stuff himself, and it was really special to see.
You and I have talked so much about Dale Sr. in the past, but so speaking of fans, let's end with this, because between this podcast and just our off-air interactions, we had lunch this afternoon, we have worn out this conference room, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. So let's end with I picked out a few questions on Twitter when I told everybody I was going to come speak to you today. And I picked out some of the ones I thought were really interesting. And the first one is, speaking of media, one of our probably mutual favorites, Ryan McGee.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to know who your favorite superhero is. And I think he probably is asking that because if he knows you as well as I know you, I've seen your offices and I've seen your galleries. And in addition to just racing art, you've got a lot of different superheroes and different things that you like to collect. So do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I do, and it's a close, it's a very close rivalry, but Batman.
Yeah,
Batman's my favorite.
I think I've seen some Batman.
Yeah,
around.
and I just think that Batman is so cool because Batman is believable.
Okay.
You know, you can really believe that there could be a superhero, with all the high-tech stuff that he has. But I think that the movie Batman Begins is one of my all-time favorite movies because it really told the story from a standpoint of like, yeah, I could buy that. I could believe that. And I think that's cool. And there's just something about, that whole Dark Knight mystique,
right.
That is very special. But I'm also a big Superman fan too. So, but between those two, I'd take those two against the all the other. The field, Batman and Superman versus the field. Yeah.
Jim LaPlante, I hope I am pronouncing his name right. Jim LaPlante first wanted me to let you know that you are, going back to what we were talking earlier, you were in his thoughts and prayers. Yeah. And his that question was actually really interested, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Do you have a favorite artist besides yourself? Maybe I'm
not my favorite artist. I can promise you that.
Do you have maybe like an inspiration or other artists that you enjoy looking at?
Oh yeah. I'm a huge fan of Da Vinci.
Okay.
Da Vinci was so brilliant, and he was just such a creative mastermind. But such a brilliant draftsman and painter that I just am such a fan of him because he was so talented in so different many aspects. I don't have any mechanical ability whatsoever. I don't profess to, but this guy could do it all. I mean, he could do it all. And then when you think that he didn't have the ability to go down to his local art store and buy his paints, he had to make them. that adds even more credibility. I also am a big fan of people like Andy Warhol.
Okay, yeah.
Andy Warhol changed the way people look at art and always tried to think outside the box about his subject matter. I think that he was pretty brilliant from that standpoint. So I always try to channel those different artists, and then Salvador Dali. Yeah. Salvador Dali was such a surrealist, and you had to really look at his painting. Everything he did, you had to look at it more than once to figure out what was going on. And I try to incorporate that into my work because I want people to see something different every time they come back to it. So I'd say those are probably the three biggest influences.
So speaking of your artwork, I'm sure you know Brent Gamble from Richmond.
Yes.
And he wanted to know, he said I have to ask about what your Richmond artwork, about that. Cause
the trophy?
You've done trophies. Are you still doing trophies?
Yeah.
So what do you have planned?
I do the trophy for the federated race every year.
Yeah.
And it's fun because, I do a generic federated car and driver for the trophy insert, and then I come back later and paint the actual race winner and his car, so that you look at the trophy and you know exactly what you were driving and what you looked like in victory lane when you won it. And so something kind of new and different, on that angle for them. But that is such a great group over there, and I have very special, memories of Richmond because I got to design one of the logos for the Richmond Fairgrounds Raceway, the last logo before they changed to Richmond International Raceway, and I got to do that logo too. And my very first program cover for Richmond was in 1988 when they changed from the old track to the new track. And that's one of my all-time favorite program covers. And I've done hundreds of program covers, but that one's very special because it was my home track.
As a side note, and one of my questions would be, speaking of program covers, of course you have this relationship with Charlotte Motor Speedway. I think you've done Bristol programs. What is on your plate this year in terms of programs?
Well, I'll do the Bristol Night Race again. I'll do the Charlotte races, 3 programs for them, and some other racetracks as well. I'll do probably about 9 covers this year. Yeah, so I love doing those things. I mean, it warms my heart to think about fans sitting in the stands, seeing my cover art, for all the different racetracks. But I just, like I said, I'm a fan first who happens to be an artist, and so I love painting for the fans.
So we'll end with this one. I thought it was a really good question. I don't know if you know Josh Weinrich from Hattori Racing, who works with Brett Moffitt now in the 16 truck.
Oh, okay.
But Josh wanted to know, what is the paint scheme that maybe you've always wanted to do but never had a chance to? And then he threw in a little wink emoji and said, would you want to do something for the 16 truck? Which, as I just mentioned, he works for Hattori.
Well, the thing about that is I would be open to that for sure. I tell people all the time that in my career, I've been so fortunate that, like I got to do Jeff Gordon's first paint scheme, okay? I got to do Jimmy Johnson's first paint scheme in Cup. I got to do Tony Stewart's first paint scheme. And the list goes on and on and on of drivers. I got to do their first paint scheme when they came to NASCAR. And that is so special, and the only way you get to do things like that is to be open to to doing new work and meeting new people, and I don't see that ever changing for me. If there's one that I could do that I haven't had the chance to do yet.
Or maybe, because I know you and I in the past, you've shown me some concepts of things that you've gone through for the schemes that you were designing.
Right.
And, it ended up with maybe Z instead of, X or Y.
Right.
Was there ever a scheme that you had laid out that you offered up and you were like, I really hope that one wins, and that it never made it to a race car?
Holy cow. Yeah, that's kind of tough. I'll always be disappointed. One that comes to mind was when I got to do the Wheaties car for Dale Earnhardt. I had a big picture of Dale Earnhardt on the box of Wheaties.
I remember this story.
Yeah, and I was so disappointed that he didn't end up getting to run that paint scheme, because I thought it would be so cool. You talk about intimidating, to look out your rear window and see the hood of Dale's race car with Dale driving it, with his picture on it coming at you.
I remember this
I thought
story.
that would have been crazy. But honestly,
but nothing really that you've always wanted to do and just never had a chance.
There's never been. I've been, again, there's that word, blessed. Some of my favorite paint schemes that I've ever done have been the ones that they ended up running and working with me on. And again, that probably goes back to me being so hard-headed that I really, pushed and championed my cause on so many of these projects that I ended up, convincing people that they needed to listen to me, and they gave me a shot. I've been very fortunate over the years that people have given me a chance and have worked with me and let me do what it is that I do. There's never been any real major disappointments from the standpoint of not getting something out there that I really wanted. There is one paint scheme that comes to mind. DuPont sells more clear coat a year than paint.
Okay.
Makes sense because they put clear coat on every color paint. Right. And I had this idea that I would design a car that looked like it was transparent. So the way you would do it would be to take a photograph of a roll cage, and you would make that into a vinyl decal and put on the car and make it look like it was. The only thing that would be on the car would be the numbers and the logos. But you could see through all that and see the inside of the car and everything. And that got rejected by somebody at NASCAR because they were afraid that people wouldn't see it enough. And and I still feel like, with the
That's
numbers
an interesting concept
and everything else, but the car would essentially look like the body was invisible.
Yeah.
But you would still see the numbers and everything else on it. But I thought that was a really cool concept, and if you promote it like, we make the clearest clear that there is, that if you're looking at a car and it doesn't look like the car body's there, I thought that would be pretty clever.
I love the fact, Sam, that every time we talk I learn something new. I have not heard that story.
Hopefully I will get, people to, to buy into that story one day, but it's going to have to be with a paint company for sure.
I had never heard that one. I love it. So before I let you go,
Yes, ma'am.
you are now based here at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yes, ma'am.
But for fans who maybe want to see you or see the artwork, do you still have a public place for that? Or what is the situation?
We will have this place. We'll have our grand opening in May here.
Okay.
And people will be able to visit. They can. We're redoing my entire website right now. And sandbass.com, they will ultimately be able to get a virtual tour of a gallery. But, I can't stress enough, that we're changing, we're evolving, and, it's been a very, very tough year, the past year. Losing my gallery is one of the hardest things I've ever been through, and I still wake up every day and just it hurts my heart. I hate that I got into the financial trouble that I did with medical bills. It was very unexpected, and it was just very challenging to have to go through that whole process. But I was able to sell everything I had and pay off my medical bill debt and make everything right. And it still hurts. And I have people tell me all the time, "Oh, don't worry about it. It was just stuff." The one thing I point out to them, though, is that, the sheet metal and the different things that I'd been given, and all the originals that I'd kept over the years that I created, having to part with that, it wasn't just stuff.
Yeah.
It was stuff that was very, very meaningful to me and had a place in my heart, and I never would have gotten rid of it otherwise, never. Because it wasn't about how much it was worth, it was what it meant to me. It was never a monetary thing, it was just how special that stuff was to me. And that was a very painful process to go through, and I'd be lying to you. I think about it every day. But all that being said, I'm more determined than ever to overcome all this and be better than ever.
So grand opening in May, we'll think of happy things.
Yes, ma'am.
And on Twitter, it's still Sam Bass Artist, right?
At Sam Bass Artist.
All right, awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Sam, I love you. And
I love you too, Kelly.
I'm glad we got to spend some time together.
Let me tell you, to all your podcast listeners,
the two of us
that I am so very proud of you. I have watched you have a dream, and I've watched you pursue this dream, and I've watched you become so respected and accomplished at your chosen career, and it just makes me very proud that I was one of your very first interviews, and it just warms my heart to see the success that's coming your way, and I wish you continued success.
Well, and right back at you, I love the fact that my home office is filled with Sam Bass artwork, and you've always been so kind to me from day one.
Cool.
So I appreciate this.
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Fun afternoon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.